There's the record. Alright, let's get this started. Yeah, someone asked for this, and now I'm doing it. Gilliman rose from his chair and disappeared amongst the shelves. He left behind an old thick book covered in green felt. This was what he had been writing in earlier. It looked tattered and worn, the pages laid flat on its side so that the books didn't close properly.
Ed, shut the fuck up!
Oh, sorry.
Sound muted.
Rip. Rosa reached out to peek at the cover when you are not allowed to touch that. Rosa's whole body froze at the sound of Gullamin's warning. Gullamin's stare followed her even as she whispered numerous apologies under her breath. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Gullamin just rolled his eyes. You are always seeking forgiveness for everything. Am I? I'm sorry. His hand struck the table in front of Rosa. In the quiet library, the sound rang uncomfortably in her ear. When she looked up, Gullamin's face was glowing severely above hers. He moved closer to her, his eyes fixed on her intensity. Rosa's mouth hung open. She struggled to say something, but her wits were like the burning ends of a matchstick. Before she could compose herself, she felt Gullamin's hand lift her chin. Rosa's heart thumped loudly inside her chest. Please, don't. Not you, too. She felt his breath on her face, and her heart sank into despair. Mother's voice resounded in her head. In the end, they are all the same. He is like everyone else. There is no more good people left in this world, child. She shut her eyes and prepared herself for the worst, like she always did when. Then she felt her face being turned from side to side. She opened her eyes to see Gullamin studying her face like a textbook. You are a fairly attractive girl. Why do you carry yourself as if it's a slight? He lifted the hair that hit her damaged eye. Rosa clenched her teeth. Is it because you were hurt before? He said it so matterly of fastly, like he was stating the sky was blue. Rosa recoiled from his touch. No, I did that to myself. I wasn't talking about your eye. He placed a book on the table. It was a thin pamphlet filled with letters. There were lines on the books that instructed the user to trace letters with their quill. Rosa wanted to focus on it, but she could feel the truth of the Marquis's words stinging her. It was the way you went limp when I touched you. Next time, I advise you to fight back. If you don't want to be touched, then you don't have to be. Do you understand this? But I am weak. Says who? His eyes were humorless. That word, the world cares not for people who think of themselves as victims, Rosa. If you need power, then be powerful. To have it, it is necessary to crush things along the way. Rosa flinched under the weight of his stare. She realized that the polite and courteous Gullamin was but a facet. It was still him, but it was nothing but an oil portrait and artwork of his devising. Synthetic, aloof, and irrelevant, it couldn't capture his essence in a few human strokes. Suddenly, suddenly Rosa realized he was powerful. Who are you? She caught herself before saying it aloud. You are not Gullamin. And yet, he spoke to her as if he knew what it was like to hurt and to fear. If you don't start acting like you own yourself, then people will not hesitate to take everything. He laid out the rest of the books he had brought out. One was an audit activity book for children. It had pictures of a child holding an apple with an arrow stuck in it. Another was a book of limericks. The other two were thicker books that intimidated her. She would come to know them as Hamlet and Paradise Lost. But the one that caught her eye was an ornamentally designed book. It had a beautiful red jacket with delicate gold trimmings lining the corners, the gods and goddesses of Roman mythology. This would be her favorite book, her treasure, but she knew it like love at first sight. These books are yours. Take them with you. Read the thin one first, and then gradually build your vocabulary with the thicker ones. Rosa ran her hands over her skin on the red book. She opened the cover gingerly, as if carefully unwrapping a present. Thank you. No thanks needed. I simply showed you some books from a portion of the library you were unaware of. You are still so generous, even if you are like this. Like what? That. What? Somewhat irritable. Guillaume didn't reply, leaving an awkward silence lingering between them. Then he gave a giant laugh that made Rosa jump out of her skin. I do look damn irritable, don't I? Why? Is it because of Emily? Guillaume's eyes drifted away. No, I've always been. You just pointed it out. But you are not usually like this, especially with Catherine and the townspeople. I find it easy to adapt to people, especially the ones I like. Guillaume looked at Rose as if he had just become aware of her presence. Makes me wonder why I'm so stern with you. I'm sorry. Rosa shook her head. I somehow prefer this side of you. Guillaume cocked his head to the side. He brought out the green book that Rosa noticed earlier. This is called a journal. When you learn to write, start one. What is it? Something you can use to remember yourself when you've forgotten. Does it work? It used to. Nowadays, not anymore. Oh, the act itself is the only thing I remember. Now, let's start with your valves. Alright, that's the end of this part of, like, I don't even know what this part was. I rarely ever do these videos anymore, so that's the last part. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.